Lost Judgment is a spin-off to the Yakuza series and a sequel to the game Judgment, and as of when this video is being made, it has some of the best combat in the entire series. The game has so much content, one of them being a key part of anybody's playthrough: upgrading. Just like any Yakuza game, you have upgrades to your character that add either more moves or just raw power in the forms of more health and attack strength. And Lost Judgment does not slack off in the upgrades department. There are a total of 214 upgrades in Lost Judgment, tons of them being unique moves for each style, giving us some better options and survivability. But what if we just didn't upgrade at all? Is it possible to beat the game? Well, that's what this video is going to uncover. Today we're going to answer the following question. Is it possible to beat Lost Judgment without upgrades? But before we dive into it, we have just two rules to follow. 1. While upgrading isn't allowed, gear and extracts are allowed. Makes it so we aren't ever entirely stuck in any part of the game. Number 2. Play on the hardest difficulty, and since I've played this game before, I have access to Legend mode, so that's what I'll be playing on. And that's it. It's not complicated, but also not as easy as you'd think. Here's how it went. We start off the game on a mission. That involves stalking a college guy that was playing a female client for her money. Go through some tutorials, and then find the guy to beat him up in his Yakuza goons. Chase him down and capture him for some answers. Before we go solve the problem once and for all, we drop by Genda's office to see the team, and learn that they are defending a cop that was accused of groping on a subway, who goes by the name Ihara. Back to our current mission, we learn that half of our old team started their own detective agency in a Jinsho called Yokohama 99. And then we raid a bar full of Yakuza that put the college kid up to no good. Just before we start, the game gives us a very useless tip about upgrading our skills. Then we beat up everybody in the bar and finish the mission with ease. The beginning of the game isn't going to be much of an issue. The game takes us back to the court session with Ihara, and just as the case was ending, Ihara gives the court a plot twist. He explains that a body turned up in Yokohama in a warehouse, and says the body belongs to a guy named Hiro Mikoshiba, a man that drove Ihara's only son to suicide. All before the cops even had a chance to identify the body. Back to Yagami, we leave the office and I immediately stock up on some healing items and collect the DLC content near the office. The next morning, we head on over to Jinsho to go to Yokohama 99, and on our way over there, we run into some bullies from a nearby high school, and teach them a lesson in manners. We make our way to Yokohama 99 and meet Tsukumo and Sugira. And learn that they actually wanted some help on a bullying case at the nearby high school called Seiryo High. And meet with the school chairman, who wants to scatter cameras around the school to see if bullying happens at the school. We disguise ourselves as repairmen and start placing the cameras. With one camera left, we see the group of bullies from earlier go into a certain classroom, and decide it would be best to put a camera in there, but before we get the chance, a classroom teacher named Sawa-sensei comes in and gets suspicious about our presence. We wait around on the school roof and see that bullying is happening in the school, and it's from the same bullies from earlier. We show it to the chairman, and Sawa learns about the crew being detectives, then plan on how to fix the bullying issue with speakers. Yagami plays the speakers around the classroom, and then the bullies come in to find Yagami and call for backup. Now I have to fight all these kids.
What? Holy shit!
Crap! Don't let him go!
Damn! I guess he's more than just your average creeper.
It wasn't a hard fight, but I did struggle a bit due to me having to relearn how to play the game. It's only chapter 1, so the enemies aren't going to do much damage, not even the boss, but as the game progresses, the low health I'm stuck with may become an issue. We use the speakers to talk against the bullies while they are in class, and they leave Koto alone, the girl they were bullying. But this only solves the bullying issue temporarily. Afterwards, Sayori calls us and asks us about a new case that also happens to be part of Seiryo High, about Hiro Mikoshiba, the guy Ihara talked about in court. Sayori tells Yagami some backstory on Ihara and his son Toshino, that was claimed to be driven to suicide. We ask the chairman about what he knows about Mikoshiba, and he directs us to Sawa. who was his teaching mentor, who didn't give much info except that Mikoshiba was part of the basketball club, and same with the group of bullies we keep running into. And what a surprise! We find them in the gym and we have to fight them. Sawa really wants us gone, so in order to be able to stay at the school, we become a club advisor and then head on over to talk to some basketball kids. And they point out that Mikoshiba was a basketball instructor that was harsh on the team, especially anybody who was lacking behind. Which also explains why Kota was bullied by the same group of kids. We head on over to the classroom, and of course he finds the same group bullying Kota. They leave, but come back to talk to Yagami, and definitely not to set up a trap for him. Of course it was a trap. First wave is easy, especially since there are desks everywhere, making it an easy sweep with a few heat actions and no damage taken.
Don't give me that smug look.
The second wave has a boss with a knife that doesn't deal much damage, but the bleed effect does stack up. Still overall, a pretty easy fight. We got two of the bullies to speak about Mikoshiba, and we got to confirm that Sawa was hiding information from us. Seeing that the bully said that she was very cold to Mikoshiba, a totally different thing from what Sawa said earlier. We try looking for her, and see her enter the chairman's room with Kanagawa police as well. After the police interrogation, Sawa tells us to meet her at a restaurant at night, but before that, we head back to Yokohama 99 to inform the team about the case Saori-san gave us. Then we make our way to the restaurant. Before we are able to enter, we are attacked by a Liamong. Inside the building, Sawa saw a mysterious woman that came to talk to her while Yagami was still fighting. Just before we could get answers from the Liamong, a random man comes outside and scares them off. We make our way inside and Sawa is holding a picture, hands us the photo of Mikoshiba tortured, and leaves us before we can talk. We leave the restaurant and see the random man that scared off the Liamong and introduces himself, Kuwana, a handyman of Ijincho, who doesn't like his new competition, that being Yagami, and decides to fight us. He's pretty quick and can hit decently hard, and he actually manages to beat us once because I got a bit reckless and didn't heal up, so I tried again.
Don't let me down now.
We watch our health a bit more carefully for this fight, and activate his short cutscene quickly with some heavy hitting attacks.
Now that's fancy. How's this? Hey, what else you got?
We basically parry with Snake style, and do most of our damage from heat actions and charge attacks from Tiger style. It doesn't take much longer until we beat him. Once Kaito and Sugiura come around to end the fight, we learn that Kuwana and Yokohama 99 gang all know each other, and they head on over to a bar, and Yagami decides to not join. We ran into Yama, who was the creator of Extracts back in Kamurocho, and we helped him out with some trouble he got into. As a gift for helping him, he gives us a Warrior Onslaught extract, which is an extremely powerful extract that can tear through bosses' health bars, and will be very helpful later in the challenge. I also bought some boxers to raise attack a small amount, and then make my way back to Yokohama 99 to talk to Tsukumo about the Mikoshiba photo. Tsukumo helps us figure out where Mikoshiba's body was dumped in hopes of finding new evidence, but we find nothing, and then one of the Kanagawa police members finds Yagami, his name being Nabe. We trade some info with each other about the case and spot a few guys spying on the crime scene, and we chase them down, taking down one of them, and identifying them as Akaike, but it turns out he and his friends were just peeking at the crime scene. We head on over to the station in Tokyo with Hoshino, where we inspect the crime scene of the groping case, and we inspect all the cameras and create a diagram of all the cameras' viewpoints, but only noticing one small blind spot in the path Ihiro ran. We go back to the school to talk to Sawa once again to see if we can get any more info out of her, and with some pressure, she comes clean about the bullying between Mikoshiba and Toshiro she witnessed. How she had to deny everything in court because she had no physical evidence, and there was witness tampering in play. She also shares that she witnessed bullying back when she was in high school, and how a kid jumped off the roof and had been in a coma for 13 years, and how the teacher took the situation lightly and he was forced to quit his job afterwards. She blames herself some more for things that were out of her control, and we leave with all that new info. We came back to Yokohama 99 to see everybody, including Kuwana, hanging out with each other. Liamung throw rocks into the office and we chase after one of the Liamung guys. Once we caught him, he had already led us to their hideout, surrounding Yagami. The branch leader of the Liamung introduces himself, name being Tesso, and he wants to make sure we're not going to leave their hideout. So we get into a boss fight. I pretty much take down his first health bar with just heat actions, and then failing the quick time event because I forgot they existed. Went into EX mode to do a good amount of damage, almost messing up at the very end of the fight, and defeating him with a parry into a few slaps. I probably should have lost the battle once, but I'll take the win. Our fighting isn't over yet though. Kaito and Kuwana catch up to Yagami, and we have to fight anybody that gets in our path to escape. And let's just say it didn't go so well. The first wave of guys is easy, but then in the next wave, there's this one mini-boss and a few enemies that have blades that are annoying to deal with. So my plan was to power through it all with heavy tiger style hits, and just heal often. I got close the first time, but I was in the middle of a charge attack when the mini-boss used its special move that did enough damage to beat me. Second try, I didn't make the same mistake and took everybody down and escaped. We head back to Yokohama 99, and while we were gone, Sugiura and Tsukuma were attacked by different masked men, showing Yagami that it's his final warning to step away from the case. Afterwards, we decided to head back to Kamurocho, and we see thugs everywhere called RK, and they are looking for somebody that disappeared a few years ago. They gave us an attitude, and we fight them, taking them down easily. Afterwards, we see Akutsu, the face of the RK, and an officer of the gang as well, and tries to intimidate Yagami and Kaito. Once that's all done, I stock up on a lot of healing items and head on over to Genda's office to meet with Sayori to go speak to Ihara. Yagami starts to suspect that Ihara orchestrated the entire groping case in order to murder Mikoshiba. We head back to the office to see Kaito, and he shows us a video that's going viral on the internet. The murder footage of Mikoshiba, and Ihara was the killer in the video. We head back to Genda's office and discuss the video, trying to figure out if the groping case was staged or the murder footage was faked. The court already decided the murder footage is unreliable as evidence as they already, in quotes, confirmed he was guilty of groping, and that he couldn't pull off both at the same time. Before we can get another moment to talk with Ihara, the police call and say that he's off limits. We start discussing the possibility that the groping case was really staged, and that Ihara could have had a stand-in when making the groping case. We also set up a meeting with the victim of the groping case, that being Mamiya. Yagami and Kaito decide to go somewhere to eat, but then we spot RK following us around. They ambush us, but we beat them up easily, and then decide to take this issue to the RK hideout. They were waiting for us. Instead of fighting, they decided they wanted to talk to Kaito because he is ex-Tojo, to go see Akutsu, while Yagami had to wait outside. Of course it's been a while, and Yagami gets worried, so he sneaks his way through the hideout. Also worth mentioning, I will only be counting the times I lose in battle, and not the stealth missions, as I did get caught a few times. We get to Akutsu and Kaito, and of course since Kaito doesn't agree to joining RK, we get attacked again. In this fight, we get to fight a group of thugs, and one mini-boss that does decent damage to us, also causing bleed damage. He also has one health bar, but every time we defeat everyone, they all get back up.
Hey! Quit dragging your ass!
Right! Sorry, boss! Yo! Fuck 'em up, boys!
Second wave is basically the exact same thing, and we parry with snake style and strike him with tiger style hits.
Dumbass, you down already?
No, sir! Come on, let's fucking do this!
The final wave comes out and we have to fight the same guys. A new but easier mini-boss, and the original mini-boss gets a special move that does a lot of damage. We take them all down with heat actions in EX mode. Once we finish them all off, Soma appears for the first time, the leader of RK, and says it's fine that Kaito doesn't want to join, and says RK will leave them alone. Yagami asks about the guy they were looking for, and Soma says that he was apparently murdered. After that's all said and done, we call Sayori and head on over to meet Mamiya. She's stubborn at first about letting us in, but we eventually persuade her to talk, and she explains the groping case to us, and we find a contradiction in her explanation, showing her the murder footage. We group back up in Genda's office and bring up the idea that Ihara and his accomplices, likely the ones in the blue mask from earlier, just wanted to make a mockery of the whole court system for not being able to save Ihara's son. We also bring up the thought that Mamiya could also have been working with Ihara in order to make his alibi for murder flawless. In addition, we hear that she went to Kurokawa Academy, as well as the 3 guys who were spying on Yagami in the crime scene in Ijincho, one of them being Akake. And Sawa could also have been a graduate from the same class. That wasn't all. If it was true they were all part of the same class, then the student that jumped off a roof 13 years ago, his name being Mitsuru, was also part of the same class, bullied by a guy called Kawai. We head back to Ijincho and see RK walking around with a small army, which is suspicious enough as it is, but we don't worry about them, and we head on over to the high school to talk to Sawa. She has seen the murder video that was published online, and Yagami tells her the chance that Mamiya is cooperating with Ihara so he could pull off the murder, and that Sawa is part of this whole puzzle whether she meant to be or not. She has to leave for a meeting before we are done talking to her. While we wait, we call Sayori to update her on our info, and she also has some info for us about Kawai, the main bully from Mitsuru's class 13 years ago, and sends us a picture of the guy. And it turns out, it's the same guy that RK was looking for earlier, and how he was already killed. I activated the squirrel search substory, as I will be getting one item I need through the substory, but no way I'm going through all of Kamurocho and Ijincho to search for items I won't be using. I head over to Kamurocho to complete the squirrel search I needed, giving me some battle innerwear that'll give me some much needed attack boost. Sawa ended up going home instead of coming back to her desk because apparently her house was broken into. We get the chairman to give us her address to go check up on her, and head on over to the apartment building next to Hamakita Park. And once we sneak past the main doors, before she can answer the door, somebody else comes to the elevator, and it's Kuwana. We also didn't notice that Soma was waiting outside, and gave orders for RK to come after us. And of course Akutsu was waiting in Sawa's apartment. RK isn't here for Sawa or Yagami, however. It's Kuwana that they really want, and we get into a fight. This is where I start to see that I'm taking a lot more damage from even the grunts, so this isn't going to be as easy. I beat the first wave no problem, mainly just using EX boosts at the beginning to clear the crowd, and using Tiger Style to do high damage to Akutsu and the others. We let Kuwana run off without us so we could stay in front of Sawa's front door and have to fight another wave of enemies. I almost died due to being reckless, but I basically just take everybody out with tiger attacks. We have to fight a third wave of enemies, but they're all just weak grunts. I'm not going over this fight. We head on down to find Kuwana and run into a fourth wave of just grunts, again being in with these. We finally get to Kuwana, but he's surrounded by more arcade grunts and Akutsu. This is the big fight for the section. I immediately go into EX mode and clear the crowd with Korean style. Akutsu is pretty annoying as every time he grabs us, he can do some heavy damage. We get to Akutsu's second phase and Kuwana runs away without us.
Stay down, would you? Not happening!
Good luck, Yagami-kun.
Luckily I had some help with the bike to clear most of the leftover grunts. We get hit by Akutsu's special move and he almost kills us in one hit, which is scary. I grab a few trash cans for heat actions and finish the fight. Once everybody is defeated, we try to leave but Akutsu stops us and shows us his phone, and what he sees is Soma holding an ice pick to Sawa. And with that, Yagami is caught off guard and gets knocked out by a grunt with a baseball bat. Before Arcade drags Yagami's body any further, they throw his phone away so he couldn't be tracked down. We wake up tied to a chair and with Soma right up in our face. He tries to scare us a bit in hopes to get some answers from Yagami. Soma is good at knowing when someone is lying and can see right through us, learning that we don't know much about Kuwana ourselves. Or should I say, Kitakata, which is his real name that Soma tells us. all without Yagami saying much at all. As Soma leaves, Akutsu and the other grunts start to torture Yagami with a few kicks and punches, all before they pick him up and they bring out the chainsaw. But before we are ripped to shreds, Kaito and Sugiura show up, as they were still able to track Arcade down to find Yagami. And we're about to start fighting everybody off. And this part of the game is one of the hardest for this challenge. First off, since they took away Yagami's phone, we have no access to healing items or extracts whatsoever. And around the building are 6 small heals, so we are very limited to how much damage we can take. And keep in mind there's about 20 grunts and Akutsu being the boss of the section, of course. Second thing is Akutsu does some insane damage. If he hits us twice or 3 times in a row, we're dead and have to restart the fight. And to make things even worse, if we decide to leave this section due to not being able to beat it and want to get better gear, we have to go through all the fights in front of Sawa's apartment again, and that's just time consuming. We failed over and over and over again. After some time though, here's how the battle went. At the very beginning, we focus immediately on Akutsu, grabbing the nearby items to use heat actions on him. His second phase, he doesn't have his chainsaw, but he's still very strong. We grab our first out of 5 heals, and we keep grabbing items and using heat actions on Akutsu. We run off while he's at low health, as we don't have any more heat to use, but luckily Kaito does some more damage to Akutsu, so we go back to take a risk, and luckily beat him just before he gets a swing at us. I grabbed the second heal a bit earlier than I would have liked. We don't do much damage before a grunt with a bench smacks us for half our health, so we grab our third heal and rely on items scattered around to do some brute damage. The mini-boss does some insane damage to us that's hard to escape, and we almost die to another grunt with an oil barrel. We grab our 4th heal, leaving just 1 left. At this point, Kaito and Sugiura did enough work on the grunts and took about all of them out. So all that was left was the mini-boss at very low health. I had an opportunity to counter his special move, but I didn't remember how soon he attacked, so I didn't risk it and just ran away. I grabbed the last heal out of fear and had 1 EX bar remaining, but before I could use it, the mini-boss got us in a loop and almost killed us. I ran for a bit, grabbed a powder bag, and smacked him with it, winning us the fight. Tons of close calls on this attempt, but I'll take what I can get in a challenge like this. Before we get some answers from Akutsu, he kicks us away and runs for his life. We get our phone back and call Sayori about what happened, and thank her for tipping off Kaito about us not answering her phone, which led to them tracking Yagami down. She tells us more about Kawai. 5 years ago, he was abducted by a few individuals off the streets of Kamurocho, which led Arcade to believe he is dead. He head on over to Sawa's apartment to get some answers about Kuwana, but unfortunately, she was murdered by the hands of Soma. Before we leave the scene of the murder, we notice an old yearbook that belonged to Sawa, and we take it with us to inspect later. The police arrive and we share details about Sawa and Kuwana, and also hear that Ihara is still off limits to pump information out of. We head on over to see the chairman, and he asks us to continue this case, to get justice for Sawa. We return to Yokohama 99 and the team to see what the next plan was. We go over what we know, which wasn't much, but Kaito learned where Kuwana's apartment was when they were drinking together, so we head on over to his place to search for clues, and we find a hidden USB memory stick disguised as a lighter. But before we head back, we're stopped by arcade grunts. After that, we start to wonder if Soma is just another piece on the board, that someone is giving him and all of RK orders. All they want is to catch Kuwana, and that Sawa was just collateral damage. Kuwana's neighbors come outside to see who we were, and he tells us that his uncle took in Kuwana when he came over to Yokohama, who is also an ex-Yakuza that runs a bar now. We head on over to the bar to see that the owner had already left, and the phone starts ringing. As Yagami goes to answer the phone, Soma sabotages us and stabs Kaito, taking him down. And with that, we get into a fight with him. He can be pretty quick, and a few stabs usually take me down, even if it isn't too much damage. We basically take down his first bar of health with items and heat actions. I try to parry him a few times, but sometimes he attacks too fast for us to parry, so I decide to switch to Tiger to deal most of my damage as always, doing some heavy blows to take his health down. He gets me with his strong move, but luckily only one of his swings got me. Still almost took me down though. Some heavy swings from Tiger style does the trick, and we defeat Soma. It wasn't that hard to be honest. Well, we didn't actually beat him. He kicked us in our temple and we were knocked down. But before he could kill us, the phone rings, and it's the owner of the bar, Kuwana's uncle. And he tells Soma to hand Yagami the phone or he calls the cops. So Soma hands us the phone and leaves. He calls an ambulance for Kaito and calls us back to tell us to meet him at Survive Bar. And we head on over immediately. We discuss a bit, letting him know that we've done our homework on Kuwana already. Then he tells us what he needed was to get the USB back, but he won't put up much of a fight for it. We don't get much leads out of him, so the USB is our only lead, so we have to keep it. Before the uncle leaves, he tells us that we will learn both Kuwana's past and his purpose once we see what's on the USB. Before we get back to Yokohama 99, Tesso stops us and assumes we are the reason arcade's all over the place. So we get into a fight with him. This fight took a bit longer than I expected, causing a few deaths. The first time was just mean though. Once he spawned more goons, he instantly used his special attack and killed us with that alone, while we were on full health. The second time we died from his same attack, difference being that we were stuck doing some heavy attacks. After that, we got a good attempt. We start by disarming and taking out all the grunts with snake style, parrying Tesso when needed. Once they're all taken down, we do some good damage, parrying him against the wall and doing a snake combo on him. As you saw, we activated his QTE, but I didn't expect the second one, and he almost defeated us from it. But we had more than enough healing items. We do some more damage with Tiger style to get into the last phase of the fight, with more grunts being summoned. We focus on Tesso first and finish him off. And then it was simply switching between Crane, Tiger, and Snake style to defeat the remaining grunts, which was easy enough, winning us the battle. After we explained to Tesso what was going on, he decides to temporarily team up with Yagami whenever they may be needed. With that out of the way, we head inside to Yokohama 99 and get Tsukumo to help us find out what's on that USB Kuwana was trying to hide. All that was on there was one video, and it was just a class bullying a kid. That kid being Mitsuru, the guy that jumps off a roof and is still in a coma to this day. The video also contained Yui Mamiya, the victim of Ahara's harassment case, and Shinya Kawai, the main bully of the situation that was claimed dead by RK, and Nakaike, who was spying on Yagami at the crime scene of Mikoshiba's murder. Next thing we do is check the yearbook we took from Sawa's apartment and notice how Kawai isn't in the yearbook, as he probably left the school after Mitsuru took the jump. We also noticed that the real teacher at the time would have been fired before picture day, so the teacher on the yearbook was just filling in for the other one. Tsukumo searches for the original teacher and finds his name, which is Yu Kitakata, in other words, Kuwana. With this crucial link, we see the possibility that Kuwana went underground after getting fired from his teaching job to get revenge on the bullies and using the footage he recorded in his classroom to force them to do Kuwana's bidding. The next morning, we head over to the hospital to check up on Kaito and tell him that himself and Sugiura are going to meet up with Yui Mamiya for some more questions. She lets us in, and we show her the bullying footage from her high school years, and she begs us to delete it. She knows that she is busted and calls in some of her friends, that being the men in blue masks from a few days ago. The fight was a cakewalk. We took off the masks to see the men in the masks were some more of the bullies from the bullying video. Afterwards, we brought Mamiya with us to Higashi's arcade in Kamurocho for some questioning. We start getting info out of Mamiya, and it turns out the bullies were being recorded in secret, and that Kuwana didn't show that video to any of the bullies until way after they graduated, so that way there is more risk to the bullying footage being released to the public eye. With this kind of leverage, Kuwana was even able to get the bullies to abduct Kawai and even record them doing so, then had them all leave Kawai for himself to take care of. The next day, he shows Mamiya and the other bullies the video of them abducting Kawai, then afterwards sends a picture to them, and that picture was Kawai, dead, which gave Kuwana even more leverage than he already had. This made it so any order Kuwana gave to the bullies, they couldn't deny it, even making them accomplices to murder. Kuwana has gotten Mamiya and the other bullies involved in murders all around the country against any and all other bullies involved with the suicide, also meaning Kuwana has killed around 7 people. Mamiya also explains us about Kuwana letting Ihara murder Mikoshiba, and also helping them with making an alibi, this being the groping case. To add on to everything, apparently Kawai's body is still preserved in a freezer somewhere, full of the bully's fingerprints, all the more leverage he will ever need. Just before we continue getting some info out of Mamiya, we get a call from Kuwana himself, telling us to meet him alone in Yagami's office. In exchange, we let Mamiya go free. Once we are at the office, we see Kuwana there, and he'll up our end of the deal. Kuwana does feel bad about Sawa's death, but not enough to stop what he was doing. He also tells us about his days as a teacher, and he originally thought the bullying was just teasing, that it was harmless. Sawa made him realize that he was blind to what was really happening in his class, so the next day he put a secret camera in the room. Before he got to watch the video though, Mitsuru had already made his jump, and every bully in the classroom lied about the bullying, but Kawai was singled out by the class. After all that, Kuwana knew what his purpose in life was going to be, making those bullies atone for their actions. Kuwana also explains to us why he was going to meet Sawa at her apartment, and she was likely taken hostage by RK in order to call Kuwana and lure him over. Both Kuwana and Yagami don't know why RK is hunting him down, but they suspect that somebody is pulling the strings of Soma and RK. He gets a call from Mamiya and runs off to meet her, but Yagami doesn't want him slipping away once again, so he chases after him. And he is lured into an underground parking lot, where he is sabotaged by the Kurakawa bullies. I accidentally die once forgetting about my low HP, then beat them easily. Kuwana got away, but Mamiya was nice enough to stick around, so we brought her with us back to the arcade. Now our goal is to get info on how the entire groping case played out in order to prove that it was made to be an alibi for Mikoshiba's murder. We mainly just confirm what we already know, but we do learn that Ihara's stand-in was actually Kuwana, who also used a 3D printer to scan his mouth. He also was the one to upload Mikoshiba's murder on the internet right after Ihara got his sentence, to make a mockery of the justice system. Once we are all done, Sayori wants to file an appeal to prove Ihara's groping case was fabricated. The next day, we head on over to the detention center to meet with Ihara. We prove to him that we know all of the story, but he still doesn't admit to killing Mikoshiba. Once we start discussing about the law not being perfect, Ihara's built-up aggression leads to him admitting he murdered Mikoshiba. Ihara has to agree to the appeal before we can go ahead with it, but he needs to be convinced because as it stands, he wouldn't gain much from doing so, except one thing: being able to humiliate the court again. He agrees to the appeal, but he won't admit to killing Mikoshiba in court, which is quite important, but it's still worth a shot. Sayori calls us and tells us about something Ihara said that fell off, meaning that Kuwana has approached other bullying victims like parents, and his first victim was Mitsuru Kuzumoto. In this case, believing that Kuwana has approached Reiko Kuzumoto, who is the mother of Mitsuru and Vice Minister of the Ministry of Health. Sayori believes that she could possibly be the one behind RK, and so we start to look into her back at Yokohama 99. We realize that if she is the one behind RK, it would make sense that she sends them out to hunt down Kuwana to save her own skin. Tsukumo also finds something else out, and on the news, Kuwana is wanted for murder, even though Soma was the one to kill Sawa. We want to know why, so we call up Nabe, who is the cop we talked to twice. He doesn't want to talk to us, but we go and find him anyway. We ran into him around Chinatown, and he decided to take us to Hamakita Park to talk. And we learned that apparently the camera footage didn't show RK or Yagami. It was just Kuwana, which shouldn't have been possible, unless someone higher up in the chain could erase that kind of footage. He even tells us that when they catch Kuwana, he'll have to die in an accident. and someone clearly has the power to make that happen.
Soon as they track him,
He wants us to leave the case as the force is pretty corrupt in closing the cases already, but Yagami won't let that slide, even getting mad at Nabe over it, which leads to the both of them fighting. After being thrown into the ocean once, I try again for my real first attempt. We won't talk about that last one.
Dead son of a bitch!
This fight was easy, honestly. As you've probably noticed, I use Tiger Style a lot for its heavy hitting moves. It's like my best source of damage other than heat actions with nearby objects. And since there was no objects around, I parried him a few times and did some heavy hitting attacks.
I think it's time you cooled off! Have a
Oh god, no.
After I avoid becoming fish food, I just counterattacked his special move a few times and finish him with a heat action. We show Nabe that we're gonna get to the bottom of this no matter who tries to stop us, so he tells us that before the crime even happened, public security already had a suspect file for it. Public security being a branch of the police that are basically Japan's spies. We also hear that they may be using Arcade to their advantage in monitoring their activity, and also that Soma apparently doesn't even have a record, as if he doesn't exist. Public security wants this whole case to be closed, and silencing Kuwana would be their best bet. Apparently Kuwana has been spotted near Komijul, and we head on over there immediately. The police already have the place surrounded, so we have to sneak our way through, and once we are in, we see some arcade grunts also looking for Kuwana. Then Sugiura catches up to us. He tells us that some cops just let arcade grunts through, so that confirms the fact that someone in authority on the force wants Kuwana gone. Once we make it to the top of the room, we are greeted with a lot of arcade members that we have to fight. This fight was a bit scary, but mainly because of one factor: the guns. At this point into the game, guns will do some insane damage, and as you will see, they almost one-shot me. So until the grunts with guns are defeated, I have to stay at full health. I get shot a lot. Once all the guns are gone though, this becomes much easier. Thank goodness Snake Style can disarm weapons from grunts. Once all the grunts are defeated, I just have to be cautious of the mini-boss's special move, I mess around and switch styles a bit, and eventually take down the last guy. Some Komijul residents come out to tell us this was all a test put together by Kuwana to see what kind of enemy he is up against, and that he is with Tesso. So we head on over there. We indeed see Kuwana there, and tell him it's likely that Reiko Kuzumoto is giving orders to public security, and they subcontracted Arcade to do it for them. Though Kuwana believes this is off, because Kuzumoto knows about Kuwana's acquaintances, that being the bullies he is using to his advantage, and so she would go after the bullies first to get to Kuwana. So he thinks someone else is trying to off him. We also learn that Kuzumoto was the one to kill Kawai in the name of vengeance for her son, who's still in a coma. So we start thinking that one of her enemies could be trying to capture Kuwana to get dirt on Kuzumoto to manipulate her into doing what they want. Kuwana's main goal is making sure that Kuzumoto gets away free with the murder on Kawai. Yagami doesn't consider that justice though, especially since that same justice took Sawa's life in the process. Things escalate between the two of them and we get into a fight.
Stay out of my way!
He's quite fast, but there's plenty of objects to use against him. Once he gets into his second phase, he hits us with a special move, but luckily it's split into two attacks. That way we can heal in between, because as you'll see, we would have died if we didn't. As usual, we finish him off with object heat actions and heavy attacks with the Tiger Style, and the battle's won. No QTEs or anything, so I first tried the fight. Once we're done fighting each other until we're both tired, we have to deal with the fact that if we don't start working together, public security will benefit from our fighting, so we make a temporary alliance. We decide that we need to confirm that it's public security we're up against, so we decide to set up a trap. Public security is the only one that could trace a phone call, so Kuwana decides to call Kuzumoto, while we use two traceable phones in an abandoned building. Sure enough, Kuzumoto's phone is compromised, and some arcade grunts come over to find the call. Once they're about to leave, we fight them all. It was very easy, I'm not going to go over this one. On Kuzumoto's side of things, a man named Bondo, who's part of public security, shows up, and he wants to ask her some questions concerning Kawai. we'll see more of Bando later. A few days later, Tsukumo is able to track down where Kuzumoto goes every day to see Mitsuru in the hospital, and we head on over there in a taxi. And we get her to come along with us to speak. Yagami's goal is to convince Kuzumoto that her actions caused Sawa to die, and that she should turn herself in. We head back to the Liamong hideout and meet Kuwana there. He's pretty pissed that we tried to convince Kuzumoto to turn herself in, and also he tries to make us believe that exposing all of Kawana's actions wouldn't be in Sawa's best interest, even sending us an audio file of Sawa describing the time she witnessed Toshiro being bullied. Kawana tells us that if we want him to stop killing bullies, we have to kill him, and then he leaves. It's the next day, and we head on over to the courthouse to discuss if the murder footage will be allowed as evidence, which it won't be. Bando comes in just to listen, as he claims that he can't let the police be embarrassed any further. They agree to the appeal, and we all get going, but Yagami and Bando wait in the room a bit to have a small talk. After a bit, we figure out that he is definitely the one giving orders to RK, or at least Soma, and then he leaves. We head to Genda's office to tell Sayori about her suspicion on Bando, and Hoshiro tells us that Akutsu is back in town because RK runs some cabaret clubs, and he treats his top girls to a bonus. So in order to get close to Akutsu, Sayori decides to become a top girl at one of the clubs, accomplishes that very easily, and then gets to meet up with Akutsu. Though things take a turn for the worse, as Akutsu was already told from one of the past arcade grunts that she was looking into kawaii not long ago, and that she was a lawyer. Just before things escalate, Yagami and Higashi show up to get to Akutsu, and even Kaito makes his return. And with that, we get into a fight with Akutsu and his grunts. This fight is pretty hard, as Akutsu likes to grab a lot, and if he does get his hands on us, we're pretty much dead. Not only that, but at this point in the game, if we are hit by any boss's special moves, it will always beat us in one hit. To add on to that, he can grab objects and basically one-shot us, so we have to be careful bringing him near any objects we want to use for heat actions. So for the entire fight, I decide to just keep my distance from Akutsu, and take out each grunt one by one using Tiger and Snake style. It takes a few minutes, but once everybody except Akutsu is defeated, I purposefully run away from Akutsu and get him in a corner with Kaito and Higashi, so that way they can do some extra damage so I don't have to get close. I use Crane style to dodge any of his grabs, and just pick up a bunch of objects to use heat actions on him. And after a long fight, I managed to beat him. We learned from Akutsu that Soma was the first to leave the Tojo clan, as if he knew the Tojo was going down. And during the fall of the Tojo, he started up RK to scoop up all the thugs that didn't have anywhere to go. Kaito starts to believe that Soma is an undercover agent for public security, which is very believable at this point, and when Akutsu hears that, he starts to freak out, knowing that Soma would know where they are right now, but it was too late, and two thugs disguised as policemen shoot down Akutsu. The next morning, it's time to dig up some intel on Soma's days in the Yakuza. Before we start asking Higashi for what he knows, Tsukumo calls us and tells us that RK attacked the Liamong yesterday, which means Kuwana went off the grid again. Higashi directs us to Soma's old patriarch, who's just a normal drunk now, and even he didn't have too much that would help us out, except he heard about where the next RK raid would happen. We head on over to the place in hopes of finding Soma, but once we beat through everybody in our way, and even make it up to the gambling den, there's no sign of Soma. At the same time as this, Kuzumoto tells Bando that she will turn herself in, but before she does, Mitsuru finally wakes up. Back to Yagami's side of things, we realize that we also just saved the kid from the beginning of the game, and he actually came in useful, telling us that he heard the orders from Soma were given from Ijincho. So the next morning, we decide to head on over to Yokohama 99 to plan what comes next. Ever since Kuwana ran off, everything has gone quiet, so we have to go out and find some lead. But before we go far, Kuwana actually calls us and tells us to meet someone at Sawa's apartment so he can take us to see Kuwana. Once we make sure we are not being followed, Akaike takes us to Kuwana's hiding spot, on a giant boat. We tell him that Soma is likely an agent of public security, and that it's only a matter of time before he's taken out. He's still set on just running away and continuing killing bullies under different identities. Before that, he asks Yagami to give a pendant with Toshiro on it to Ahara. Before he tries to run away, Soma arrives, killing Akaike and having Arcade Grunts board the boat in order to catch Kuwana, and even killing Yagami if they have to. Kuwana figures out that Kuzumoto has sold Kuwana out for some reason, likely having to do with public security. And with that, we fight. And this is another very hard section of the game. The issue is the boss on this section. He starts off with a bat, which isn't an issue. We could heal between his hits if needed. But his second phase, of course he has a gun. And he will one-shot us every single time. And he also is very fast when shooting, only giving me like half a second to avoid his attacks. I lose over and over again, and after a while, I started looking into my sample extracts to see what I could use. I tried the energy ball extract a few times when he was at 2 health bars left, but sometimes once he gets up or goes around a corner, he catches me off guard and shoots me. Even sometimes, after using a heat action, this man would just roll and shoot instantly, which doesn't give me enough time to react and dodge. And to add on to that, when you are against bosses with guns in most Yakuza games, if you try to attack them head on with combos and such, they'll dodge you and instantly shoot you, making it almost unavoidable. I even had one run ruined by Kuwana as he got in the way of my energy balls and gave the boss enough time to shoot me. Also had some attempts with the lightning blade extract, those didn't end well, and even tried some attempts with the Boon of Fire extract, and making that with crane style kicks proved very effective, even against the boss, but it worked too well, and with enemies all around me, the boss pulled out his gun. It was too chaotic and I lost. After many attempts, I finally got my good run. I start by switching to crane style and using the lightning blade extract to clear out all the enemies quickly and do good damage to the boss. Once everybody is down, I use the rest of my extract to get him down to 2 health bars. I evade every gunshot with crane style and counterattack his special moves. While doing so, I use heat actions on him, then dodge immediately afterwards. Once he's down to 1 bar of health, I decide not to risk anything and use the energy ball extract. Then Kuwana decides to save me by taking a bullet from me. Then I can use my teammate heat action to take him down, winning the fight. It's time for plan B, but it involves Kuwana jumping off the boat and also causing an explosion. He gets away, Soma and RK leave to avoid cops, and Yagami luckily survives the blast, and holds on to the pendant of Toshiro that Kuwana gave him. With that, we are finally on the last chapter of the game, with a lot of extracts if needed, and spoiler alert, I use some more. At this point, I can say for certain that you don't need extracts to complete a challenge like this, but it does help speed up the process quite a bit. I'm saving myself some time and getting this video out sooner for you guys. You're welcome. Yagami's doing alright and decides to meet up with Reiko Kuzumoto at the hospital to confirm that she sold Kuwana out to public security because Mitsuru woke up, and she doesn't want to lose him all over again if she were to turn herself in. Once we are back at Yokohama 99, we have Tsukumo look into the pendant while Yagami and Sayori meet up with Ihara to see if we can get anything else out of him, only learning that he still has the murder weapon hidden, but we can't do much about it. We come back to Yokohama 99 and learn that the pendant was a decoy to hide an SD card that has the original footage of Mikoshiba's murder, no edits or anything on it. Matsune, one of the bullies from Seiro High, comes into the office and tells us he's worried about Akane, the female bully, and that she was hanging out with some shady guys. To be more specific, they are RK. And they have Akane and Koda kidnapped. We immediately head on over and the rest of the team joins us too. Even Tsukumo using the drone. Yes, that's important to add, and I'll explain why shortly. We head on over to where RK is and raid the place in order to save the 2 girls. The boss is actually pretty strong and could take us out in 2 or 3 fast hits, and we were in a small space with many grunts, so I lose about 2 times. One thing that really did help though was Tsukumo's drone, as he would send down smoke grenades that stun all enemies, including the boss and mini-boss. The smoke bombs really made this section much easier, as I would avoid the boss, wait for him to be stunned, and then do some heavy strikes with Tiger Style, and after a bit of stalling, he was defeated. Once we freed the girls, Soma appears and tells us that Kuwana is planning to reveal the location of Kawaii's body on the internet, and he cannot let that happen. And then tells the crew that he is considered a necessary evil to try to maintain order, and that killing Sawa was justified. Which is a load of bull, of course. He really came here with a request to not bring up Kuzumoto's name during the appeal, which was actually Kuzumoto's request, as she doesn't want Mitsuru to be branded the child of a murderer. We try to make sure he doesn't escape, but then he pulls out a gun and shoots Akane. Luckily, he just used a paint gun as a distraction, and he escapes. A month later, it's time for the appeal, and it's time to bring the murder to light. With some pressure, and also some evidence Ihara was surprised we had, including the call between Kuwana and Sawa being recorded, he ends up admitting that he killed Mikoshiba, and tells the court where he hid the murder weapon. As the case ends, Bando and Kuzumoto come into the room to talk with Yagami, and apparently Kuwana wanted to talk to Yagami through Kuzumoto's phone. Kuwana tells us that he is very close to Kawaii's frozen corpse, and Bando tracks his location and dispatches Soma and RK. Then Kuwana hangs up after only telling us he's somewhere in Ijincho. Once we arrive in Ijincho, Tsukumo is able to track down where Kuwana is hiding, which is at an abandoned warehouse. Just before we head on over with Kaito and the gang, we stock up on about every single healing item Ijincho stores can give me. Then I head on over to Kaito, which activates the last mission of the game. Once I meet up with Kaito, RK grunts come over to try to stop us, so we have to fight them. They aren't that hard unless the boss of the section is the last one left, and he gets angry, making him attack faster than he already was. The cops arrive, but they're likely on public security's payroll, so before they can arrest us, Nabe comes in to vouch for us. The cop strikes Nabe, but then the high school bullies come to help and record the cops and cause a distraction for us to escape. Even the Liamong help us escape as well. And with that, we're on our way to the warehouse. Once we arrive at the warehouse, we begin the hardest section of the game. This section has a total of around 100 enemies that do decent damage to me, and also 4 mini-bosses, in which one of them is a headache to deal with, because he has a gun that always one-shots us. Even after my first death, I knew that this section was going to be an issue. After losing over and over again, I see that my best bet for using an extract may be the Guardian Spirit extract, which basically is just added damage against any enemy I touch. Even with the help of the extract, I still either got overwhelmed or shot before I could react in time. And if I decided to go back to my last save point to prepare more, I would have to fight all those arcade grunts from the beginning again. I had to call it quits at some point and think of something else to do. Without upgrades, I'm pretty limited on what I can do to prepare better. Also seeing that at this point, all sub-stories are locked now. But luckily, I came up with 2 ideas. The first idea being that I get new gear that maxes out my defense, so if I'm lucky, I can survive bullets from the last mini-boss. If that wasn't going to work, then my next idea would be to complete a certain gauntlet that allows me to get the recipe to craft a Mystic Dance extract that prevents death for 60 seconds. If anyone else wants to do this challenge, I recommend doing Sub-Story 16 beforehand, because that unlocks a recipe for the Dancing Crane extract, which will automatically dodge bullets. Though, do keep in mind, the gauntlet for the Mystic Dance extract recipe is very difficult. Probably one of the most difficult gauntlets if I remember correctly. Anyways, I managed to pull through and beat it. Here's how I did it.
I wish you hadn't.
So whenever I'm not fighting a mini-boss, I mainly go into crane style to sweep through enemies faster. A first mini-boss I take down with some tiger style heavy attacks and a friend heat action. The second mini-boss goes down to just tiger style, and all my damage comes from heat actions against the third mini-boss. When the final mini-boss comes out, I pray that my gear has enough defense to live a single gunshot, and luckily, it works. I just have to make sure I'm at full health the entire time fighting against him. Once I see that it works, I use the Gauntlet Spirit Extract and start to focus only on the mini-boss. I get him into a corner, use Crane Style to do some chip damage to him, then heavy attacks when he's blocking. Just before my extract runs out, I get to knock him into the air and juggle him around a bit, then finishing him off with a heat action. We clean up the rest of the grunts and finally beat this section. Our fighting isn't done yet though. We head on inside just to find more RK. That'll be a common theme for this last chapter, so I'm not going to talk about most of it. But after we beat up this group of thugs, we get a call from Kuwana, and he tells us that this was all a trap for Soma, using Kawaii's corpse as bait. He wants to expose public security to keep Kuzumoto safe, but he needs Yagami and the group to help take Soma alive. He hangs up, and we start to go deeper and deeper into the warehouse, fighting through many enemies, most being just grunts of course, with only one boss to fight along the way. Wasn't an issue at all. We finally get to the bottom and see Soma and RK looking for Kawaii's body. And they do find it, but before they take it with them, Kuwana tries to ambush Soma. But we do as well, surrounding all of them. Well, not all of them, as many more RK members come around, and then we get into a fight with Soma and RK. This fight isn't hard, but it isn't the main fight either. We can just ignore the grunts and focus purely on Soma in order to end the fight sooner, which I do just by using Tiger Style heavy attacks in order to do so.
Go, Talk!
Yagami!
Soma runs off, but Yagami chases after, and he runs into a freezer, in which we have to fight him inside. He's very fast and can counterattack us at times, so I look around the room to see what items I could use for heat actions, and also extract samples I could use. And after a few deaths, I had my strategy figured out. Here's how it went.
Stick around, won't you? Behind you.
I would start by using some of the bricks for heat actions, and then use the telekinesis extract for fun and good damage. It would hold him in place and smash him onto the ground, doing some consistent damage. Afterwards, I would continue to use brick heat actions on him until he got into his second phase. Once he did switch phases, I decided to use the Boon of Fire extract with Crane Style, as the fire would stun him and do tons of damage, taking him down pretty quickly.
Pay attention.
Once Soma is defeated, we take a look at Kawaii's corpse, and it turns out Kuwana has a bomb underneath it, and he threatens to blow it up in order to keep Kuzumoto's secret safe. We need to make sure that Sawa's justice prevails, and have Kuzumoto turn herself in. Kuwana can't get himself to blow up the body, and we get into a fight with him, the final fight of the game. Since we beat Soma pretty quickly, we still have the Boon of Fire extract activated, so we get some good use out of that before it ends, doing over a full health bar worth of damage. And with a mix of heat actions, we get into his second phase. While hitting him with tiger style attacks, we get a chance to juggle him for some extra damage. Then once he's low enough, we decide to have some more fun and use an extract. This one being the Insta Flux extract, which is a very strong attack that you have to time for some good damage. And I messed up the timing a few times, but still got enough damage in to be worth it. Then once that extract ends, we use the most broken extract in the game, Warrior Onslaught extract that we've been saving the entire game. It does some massive damage and breaks shield as well. You'll see how well it worked. We failed his QTE a few times, but it's alright as it doesn't kill us. But after a bit, I managed to get the inputs right and I have officially beaten the game.
Let go!
So with this all finished, we can finally answer the question, is it possible to beat Lost Judgment without upgrades? And the answer is, yes you can. I believe you can do this challenge without extracts for sure, but I decided to use them to speed up the challenge. And it doesn't go against the one main rule of the run. This challenge was much harder to complete than the last one I did, and also has a lot more story to go over in detail, so apologies if this video is quite big. Next time I play this game, I won't be going over much story. And that goes for any game that I've already played in the past. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe, it helps me out a lot, and I'll see you guys in the next one.